Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Guns of Navarone, RMP, Troy Shuker, Bose Nail, Joseph Pizarro, Samson, Maris, Mobile Mac 777, Neo the One, Lost Cat FE, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Mike, Muted, Dick Earth Skeptic, NA Literalist, Maria Neeland, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, Rob H, The Real Gabster, Windrider, Liam Nedrick, Abraham Mohammed, Dave Rakia Gafford, Naibai, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Fireball X, TheFlatEarthChannel.com, Texas Mike, Edwin Johnson, Kirsten Smith, Alexander Main, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I'm going to raise the mic on whoever is in Google and Discord so you can enjoy their conversation while I set up for today's live show. So I've got all these images from you from Skype, 10th man.
Yes.
They're up and they're presented, so...
Ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one, as you can see, is titled How to Achieve an Angle. So this is basic to the use for navigation if you're going to use the sextant, because it's basically a glorified protractor. And as you can see here described in an image, if that's you as the person there, and 90 degree through your head to the flat plane of the earth, that's your 90, and then you have that 0 line, and the 2 straight lines give you a corner. And if your star is at, say, 20 degrees, as you can see there where it says 20 degrees, then from where you are, your feet on the flat plane, that creates a vertex where the 2 lines meet, and that corner allows you to find the angle between 0 and 90. So there's your 20. So that starts 20 degrees from in the sky from where you are. Now, if you spot another one that's 45, then you could see the 45 and 70. And if it's directly over your head, say at noon, then it's at 90 degrees. You're right under it. So if you consider the 20, the 45, the 70, and the 90 as stars or the sun, the moon, okay? And if you draw a line straight down from the 45 to the ground, that's the geographic position on the earth of that star. So that would be its 90 degrees. But from where you are, it's your 45, if you follow what I'm saying. Next slide. So we know we live on a flat plane. And so here it is, all squared up in little tangent planes of theirs. So this is how they trick us. If you go to the next slide, they wrap that around the sphere, and they work on flat planes because the Earth is obviously observably flat. And because of yesterday's presentation, I showed you that in plane, plane sailing, they consider up to 600 miles flat. And we're not even talking about that when it comes to the Black Swan, because it's obviously a lot shorter in distance, and it disproves the globe, which is why it's the #1 killer of the globe. But the sextant is a validator of that #1 killer. As you can see here, they'll wrap it around the globe and say, this is where you are. Now, if you go to the next slide.
Before you do,
I've made my...
Just before you do, though, so each of these pictures, these squares, I'll just highlight them for the audience, are flat squares, and they're measured out and surveyed as being flat. Now, that's not obvious visually from this particular image, but they're taking each of these flat squares and then putting them on a ball. So what you end up with is the effect of a mirror ball, lots of flat squares on a circular or spherical surface. But just for clarity, these here are all flat squares.
Correct. And if you go to the previous picture, you can see it was taken from a flat map and then done the way you just said exactly. Thank you for making that point even clearer. So I made a slide of a disco ball Earth with these flat squares representing a flat area. And I was this 8. I've got 8 zenith lines going here, depending where they want you on this presupposed sphere. So they all go to the center of the Earth. We're going to find out why. So if you look at the North Pole in this version here, it would be on top, the South Pole on the bottom, and you see the tangent plane underneath each one of those straight zenith lines. Then I've got them 3 on each side. So they consider each of these areas flat, and that's where maybe a sailor or someone is taking a measurement of a luminary. Next slide. I break it down to just one tangent plane, one square. So you saw all those. We're just going to focus on one right here. So there's the sun on their presupposed spherical Earth. They use the flat square. They say the sun is directly overhead there, and it's going through the plane right to the center of the presupposed Earth. All right. Now, you might be somewhere else on this presupposed Earth, and you get an angle to it. That angle tells you your distance between where you are when you took the angle, longitude, latitude, to where this sun's GP is geographical position. So when the sun is directly overhead something, that's the GP of the sun. If the moon is directly overhead something, that's the GP of the moon, and so on and so on. Let's try it out. So basically, how do you get an angle? You need a protractor, which is basically a glorified sextant, a little bit more, but that's it. So if you're on top of this presupposed sphere and the sun is directly at 45 degrees to your position, your zenith is 90 degree. That's straight up from you. And then, of course, the 0 line of that flat tangent plane. There's no other way to get an angle to that sun unless you have 2 straight lines meeting at a point, which they call a vertex. And notice, this might be a sailboat. This might be someone standing somewhere. And that's how he gets the angle to where the sun is to his actual position. Now, the sun is directly overhead at a 45 degree angle. I'm sorry, the sun is directly overhead somewhere else, but his angle to it is 45 degrees. So let's go to what they say, how light works. And the next slide, I've got the same protractor with the same angle that was 45. As you can see on the lower triangle, it still points at 45. But when you take the reading from the center of the Earth and compare it, if you just took it from the top of this presupposed Earth, you're looking at 31 to 45. So it doesn't exactly work the way they say anyway. If you can see that, do you see what I'm showing there?
Yeah, if you don't take a tangent line from that second point and have it pointing down, you have it pointing at what would be you lying on your back, pointing north. And then take
basically all I did, if you go to the previous slide, is I took that same slide, which is just one protractor with an angle to the sun, and I brought it down as if you were taking the actual measurement from the center of the Earth, which is what they say they do.
Yeah, on the first
and
slide.
That same 45 is now 31 on the original one.
Yeah, but what they would do is rotate the ball through 90 degrees.
Correct.
So that the zenith was still pointing, so that this line here was still pointing directly down, which I can't depict in this graphic, but straight down where my mouse is pointing through the dot. In other words, you'd have to depict it rotated 90 degrees to get what they would take as their zenith, because this now doesn't point as a zenith. It's lying flat on the top of the plane that you're going to be measuring.
It's actually the zenith. The 90 doesn't change. The 90 on both are the same.
He's saying this second protractor, sorry, just for clarity, this second protractor, although it doesn't look it in the representation, is actually rotated 90 degrees towards us in the frame. So it's pointing straight up, giving you this line as representing pointing straight up down towards this red dot.
Well, hang on, let me say it better. If you go to the previous slide, it's a guy on the sailboat taking the reading from the surface of the Earth. If you go to the second slide where I've got it superimposed on each other, now you've got a guy at the center of the Earth taking the same reading, and it doesn't show 45 degrees, it shows 31. Now, the reason I show this is because they're always saying light comes in parallel rays, so they can get their transversal, so they get an angle to match from the center or the top. But sunlight doesn't come in parallel rays. So I'm showing a little mishap in their what do you call it, system here, the way they try to fool you, because who in the world goes to the center of the earth and takes a reading? Nobody. But if you would, like they say, it matches, it doesn't work out because there's points at 31, because the zenith on both of these are still the same 90. It's just you're at a different place, so it doesn't work. But this will make clear with the next slide. So to get angles on a parallel line, it'll always be the same because you got two parallel lines, and a line crossing that creates two different vertexes, and the angles will always be the same. Doesn't matter which way you go. So this is what they're doing. So they're saying, in order for them to make a flat Earth work on the ball, the sun's light has to come parallel or it can't. Real simple. And those two parallel lines represent sun rays. And the line going vertical, or not exactly vertical, but causing the 75-degree and the 130, is where you are on top of the Earth, which would be the top line, and the bottom one would be if you were in the center of the Earth. This is all they're doing here. It's a little trick. So let's go to my slide, the next one. So here you are. There's those two parallel lines, because they say, as you can see my image of the sun there, those sun rays are coming in parallel lines. Okay, so guess what? If it's 45 degrees on top, it's 45 degrees there at the center of the Earth, according to them. And there's your little tangent plane. Next slide. We have a big problem. The sextant cannot work on the globe model if light comes in at funny angles. It's impossible. So does light come in at funny angles? Next slide. What does this look like to you, Nathan? Does this look like parallel lines or funny angles?
Or funny angles, I would say.
Yeah, pretty clear. And I saw last week it was raining, and there was 3 days of funny angles through the clouds. It was glorious to watch it again myself. Next slide. These ones have lines. Now this one's important because that one straight line would be the zenith position of the sun, and then you see the funny angles, the rays. So that sun in this picture with all the lines showing where the rays are, that sun is somewhere over the Earth, directly over a position, and they know exactly where that is. That's the 12 noon. Okay, and then the funny angles disperse from that point on. Next slide. This one's from a weather balloon. Does light come in at funny angles? How about the sun's hot spot, which would be the geographical position of the sun? That's 12 noon. So wherever that is on Earth, that's 12 noon, where that hot spot is. And look at the angles of the lights going. So this is how light works, and this is how you can use a luminary with a sextant. It never comes in parallel rays. But the only way the globe math works is if it did. So let's go to another slide I made. The sextant works on a plane with light at funny angles. Well, because you need the 0 and you need the 90. So there it is. There's the sun's GP. So we'll say the sun is directly over the Earth somewhere there, directly above you. So that's it, the sun's at 90 degrees. But if you're on a boat on the left side here, say 1,500 miles away from it or 2,500 miles away, your angle to the sun's GP, where its 12 noon zenith is 45 degrees. Now, you can draw a circle, and you can find out you're somewhere in that circle until you take a second reading. And when another circle crosses your circle, you're in one of those 2 points where the lines cross the circle. So this is how it works. It can't work on a globe. It's impossible. It has to work on a flat plane. Next slide. So again, this accentuates how section actually works. So you got the sun's GP over a certain spot of the Earth, 12 noon, and I've got 3 sailboats now. Now these 3 sailboats are different angles to those sun's rays. So this guy's at 30 degrees, this guy's at 45, and this guy's at 60. So they're all different distances, and this is how a sextant tells a sailor, a navigator, where they are in relationship to the sun, the moon, the stars at that given point. Can't work on a curved surface, as illustrated by the next slide. How the sextant cannot work. So if you've got the same sun on a presupposed globe, the 90 will work on that one tangent point. It will work just at that one point because that's the hot spot. but you can't get an angle because the Earth is curving. You need two straight lines in a corner and a vertex to get an angle. So you may have a vertex where the two lines meet, but you can't get a corner because of the arc of the Earth. So this can never work on the Earth with the sextant, that is, if the Earth was curved, as you can see here. Next slide. But look, if I just say, well, if the Earth was flat and put a sailboat there, now you can get an angle because you got a corner. You see, the sextant validates the black swan in a sense. It's awesome. It's the only way. And as yesterday when last slide here, as yesterday when I showed how they say you can go 600 miles in the water and plain sailing, crossing different latitudes. The Earth is flat. You use planar geometry. This proves it here, and this destroys Eratosthenes as well at the same time. So here's those pillars, and they took it to the center of the Earth, 7.2 degrees, and that's how you got the circumference of the Earth, Eratosthenes, because he presupposed the sun rays are coming parallel. That's the picture to the right. But we know they don't because we just saw how the sun's rays come. And so the picture to the left, figure 2A, shows how the sun above the flat world is the real world. And now the sun over the first pillar or well is its zenith, 12 o'clock. There's no shadow because it's directly over. But if you had all these other pillars, because the funny angles of the sun, you would have just like the sailboat, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees. It's over. It's done. I'm finished.
Epic. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sure, Isa Mihalski was covering the 600 nautical miles of plain sailing quite some time ago. He just didn't. I mean, I'm sure he did expand on it in drips and drabs. He just never put together a presentation as you have with the sextant as the example. But yeah, it has to be done flat because it is flat.
Yeah, and they even tell you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. They tell you so. As they do with many examples, even from NASA, we've had reference where they say, no, you've got to treat it as flat.
Yeah, all those documents from Martin Marietta, McDonnell Douglas, NASA itself, all of these things are done on a flat, motionless Earth.
Yep.
There's the clue, ballers. Wake up.
A clue. More of a party political broadcast than a clue.
I'm just trying to be nice to them if I get any of them here to talk about what we just shared.
Yeah, they're telling you it's flat.
Yes, they are. Anybody in Discord want to pipe in?
Anybody got any comment from Discord? No pressure. Really not.
It's comfortable being a flat earther because all the winning arguments back the flat earther. That's what is great about digging in to these things.
See, that's the thing. You can either decide to lie to yourself and embrace the current paradigm, regardless of how wrong it is, or just accept that better than the rhetoric because you can disprove it. Well, at that point, either you lie to yourself, which leaves you in cognitive misery, or you accept the social stigma that comes with understanding that the Earth is obviously and observably flat and being described as flat and measured as flat, and they give disclaimers about how you must treat it as flat. So it's not a stretch, really.
It's interesting. I was going to say funny, but it's more interesting than funny. It's interesting that people will debate over a soccer match or American football match or a tennis match and try to figure out the nuances of it. And one guy, of course, has his team, the other guy has his team, and they argue for endless hours, right? And what are they really trying to do? They're trying to say, look, all the facts are on my side. That's why my team should have won. Or all the facts are on my side. That's why my team did win. And then they endless conspiracies about the referees threw the game, to the coach got paid off, all these different things. And then when it comes to the nature of our reality, and we say, well, why aren't you as passionate and research and finding out why things are what they are with the nature of our reality, which is Earth? And then when they hear some of our arguments, no, that's too much cognitive pain. I'd rather go fight about my soccer team that lost but really
Exactly.
won.
Yeah, you answered the question with the first statement. So they're more concerned with their soccer team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the point of the
Yeah.
soccer team.
Well, there's no cognitive pain.
It's just keeping you occupied. It's just keeping you busy, keeping you distracted.
Exactly. And there's a lot of distractions going on in this world. And people, instead of just slowing down, like you said, happened to you after you turned off the TV and go out with your kids in nature and wonder about things that are now like when you were a child. Because I still, when I see things in nature, I'm just like, God, man, you made everything so beautiful. It's wonderful. I don't understand everything in nature, but I don't need to.
Couldn't agree more.
Hey.
Hey. Hi, guys. I'll probably catch the presentation when it gets uploaded. But yeah, I mean, I fully agree with you on it's obviously an observably flat. This weekend I live in Cape Town, South Africa. So this weekend I was just taking a drive around this huge mountain that we have called Table Mountain, and I had a discussion with the friends of ours that was with me. And I just told them to look at the horizon, it's flat. And then they said, yeah, but could dip afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, we probably have like a Tootsie Roll Earth, because you don't see it any curve from left to right, man. It's so obvious. But yeah, thanks. It was beautifully explained there, Tent Man.
Thank you. We're all in this journey together. So keep coming on the show and sharing your findings too.
Cool stuff.
I've seen your tabletop mountain. I've seen that in pictures before.
Yep, even that looks flat, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was Rory. Rory had his YouTube channel. He did something on that. He's from South Africa.
Cool, I'll check him out. Thanks.
Yeah. It's called My Perspective, I believe. My Perspective is his channel. So he's an artist, so he knows about vanishing points and convergence of lines and how the eye works. He does a great job, actually. I think Nathan's talked about him before too.
My Perspective. Yeah, it's great. Rory.
Yeah.
Rory Cooper.
That's it, Rory Cooper. He had some cool graphics, remember?
Yeah, he was amongst the first people that I saw when coming to this subject that was actually making videos on it. Subsequently, Eric DeBay used a lot of his footage in his background.
It's My Perspective, right? My Perspective?
Correct.
I'm just checking his channel out. I'm not seeing any videos on there.
Try Rory, Rory, and then Cooper, My Perspective, and see what you get.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you? Then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you're currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. One last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Arwin, 10th Man, and Neil, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Rams. Super enthusiasm levels. Woohoo. Maybe the housekeeping will get you in the mood a bit better. So, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that would be a horizon, formerly known as Earth curvature.
Anybody?
Nothing but an apparent horizon. That's all we've got.
Apparent, that's no good. We need physical geometric sphere edge.
All
No.
I've got is apparent. Sorry.
Very disappointing. Got tons of apparent horizons. We used to sell them on Ballbusters for super chats. Still some available. Smash the super chat if you'd like an apparent horizon. Any evidence of a molten iron core at the center of a presupposed spherical Earth?
I don't even know. Why did they even come up with that stupid molten iron core? Was that for
The P waves and
the
S
magnetic
waves,
force?
isn't it?
P waves and S waves. Very unreliable.
Then extrapolation from there.
Extrapolation
No, I
based on
know.
presupposition of a sphere Earth beneath your feet, and then P waves and S waves that proved inaccurate when they dug the Kohler borehole.
Yeah, but then the iron molten core concept come before P wave and S waves were enacted. Why did they even put it there in the first place? What was it for?
We're begging the question. You know, you've got to have your...
Isn't it to generate the magnetic field to justify that somehow?
Well, you could do it either way. You could either justify the core with the magnetic field or the other way around. Depends on which consequent they're affirming. Depends where they put the P statement. Hey, Sleepy Mario.
Hey.
Yeah, exactly.
When you say the other way around, what do you mean, Nathan?
I mean, you can say if molten iron core, then magnetic fields. Magnetic fields, therefore, molten iron core. Or you can say...
Gotcha.
Or you can do it the other way around. You can say, which one did it say then? If molten iron core, then magnetic fields. Well, you say, if magnetic fields, then molten iron core. Molten iron core, because of magnetic fields. Just whichever you like.
Gotcha.
Also, I was thinking at the core of this presupposed sphere Earth, wouldn't the pressure be near zero? Because what kind of gravitational effects would they assume be happening at the core of the Earth?
There wouldn't be
I would
any
think the
gravitation.
pressure would
Gravitational
be
effects. Gravity's not a
near
force. It
nil.
can't act on matter, so there can't be any unless you can debunk Einstein.
No, there's no gravitation at the core, it's just the pressure from everything else pressing against it
What core?
because of gravity.
What core would this be?
But it's not pressing in that direction, is it?
The direction of this
In
presupposed...
spherical geometry, it is.
direction of this presupposed core that we have no evidence of. We're trying to figure out the pressure inside a presupposed molten iron core, which there is no evidence of. Is that correct?
I'm sort of guessing that there wouldn't be much pressure there because I don't know, that's where the source of of this gravitational effect is apparently coming from.
So
But,
two things.
yeah,
One we've
yeah.
covered overtly, which is no gravitational force. It's not a force bending pseudo force space. Definitely not going to be forces and pressures involved in that description of pseudo force space bending. And further to that, where's there exactly? The centre of a presupposed spherical Earth that's molten and core shaped.
Yeah.
I see. Fascinating
Right.
discussion about these hypotheticals, presuppositions, fantasies, shall we call them.
So,
Any evidence of a molten
sleeping-
iron core, though?
Go on, Arwen. I'll come after you.
I was just gonna be a little bit of a baller again and just say that, look, gravity, if you assume it to be some kind of a force, which you don't understand, right? But if it is a kind of a force, then yeah, at the center there may not be gravity there experienced by the matter because it's already at the center point, right? But it's still going to receive pressure from all the other matter also trying to get there to that central point from the outside. So there will be pressure, not gravity.
All right. So, Sleeping Warrior, are you there?
Yeah.
So you said something after Rams made that initial point. So when Einstein came and did pseudo force space, he basically destroyed the argument that everyone has as a baller.
Oh, he's destroyed a lot of arguments. It's just that they don't like accepting it, so they keep going back to a historical reference point known as Newtonian gravitation. But the problem with that is Einstein superseded that. So what it does is it pitches them directly against the great, wonderful mind of Albert Einstein when they're reasserting their dogmatism heliocentric model. And now I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, but what I am saying is if they're going to claim that Einstein's wrong, let's have a little bit of evidence because Einstein's the current science, right?
You want to add something skeptical?
Right.
Hold on one sec. We're just on a mic that's open. Skeptical, did you want to add something? Wonderful. Thank you for your input.
Yeah. So if Einstein is current science, then they can't talk about the core, magnetic, anything.
They can't talk about the core magnetic.
Yeah, they
Well, they
can.
can talk about it. All they can do is calculate it, though, right? Because Einstein's effect only happens in the medium of space-time, which is obviously conceptual, and you can believe it, right? But that's the current position in science. They've got to demonstrate that he's wrong. So how are they going to do that?
Well, let me put forth that statement better. Were they not saying that the molten iron core is where the gravity is the strongest and the surface of the earth is the next strongest and then gets less and less? So if that was their source of gravity and Einstein debunks it, it's over, right?
Yes.
That's what I meant. It's pretty simple. Can't have both because he superseded, right?
Yeah, they can't have both.
We're still on molten iron core, but any scientific evidence of gravity? Veered into it?
Sorry, but there should not be stronger gravity at the center of the presupposed spherical Earth, whether
Stronger
it's
what now?
molten iron core or not.
Stronger what now? It's not a force.
Doesn't matter.
Nathan,
Even the space-time bending should be less at the arrival point because that's where it's all going directed at. So if there's this bending of space-time in one direction to that central point and from the other side to the other direction, then that evens out whatever the bending of space-time is.
If you say so. Okay, thank you for that. Clarity has been gained by all. So scientific evidence of gravity. Anybody at all? Ninja Wallaby, go ahead.
Well, I think it's the same. I think we're experiencing the same amount of gravity all the way through to the core of the Earth, and we're experiencing even the International Space Station is experiencing 98% of the Earth's gravity.
What's gravity?
So is there a specific point in space right at the center of Earth where gravity begins and ends?
No,
At a specific point in space?
no, I don't think no, because Gravity is a function of mass. So
It's not
the
a
amount of
function.
mass
Not in current physics. It's
creates
not.
like
So
so.
at the center of the mass, right at the core of the center of the mass, it would be like zero gravity.
Oh, okay. So okay, yeah.
Because the most mass is away from it.
Right. So you would have exactly the same amount of gravity going away from you than that is actually depositing on you, right?
If mass
So
is the cause, then yeah.
yeah. I would agree. Yeah,
Halfway down
I
to the
think that's a
core
valid.
should be.
That's a valid statement. Whoever made that statement, I'm sorry, I don't know what your name is, man. But that's a valid statement. Absolutely.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm very confused. I don't know what we're talking about. Can you define mass for us, please, Ninja Wallaby?
Afternoon, guys.
Hey, Adam.
Okay, this might be a little bit complicated. Mass is like the amount of electrons, neutrons, protons that are in unavailable space, right? So in an area, all those things accumulate, and that is mass.
That's mole. Amount of stuff. That's mole.
Yeah, it is an amount of stuff.
Yeah, that's mole. Mole. Look it up. Mole.
I'm sorry?
Mole.
What do you say?
Mole.
You're saying you just described the quantity of something, not what mass
Yes.
is. You just describe what quantity is. In which case, when we're talking atoms, we have a unit which is related to 6 times 10 to the 23 atoms, which we call a mole. But that in no way is a description of mass.
Oh, no. A mole of atoms is different. I mean, like, so a mole is like a quantity of atoms, right? So that's a scientific
What if you were to
term.
just say that it was the weight of a given amount of matter?
I don't think that would be accurate.
Okay, so we've got a
That
mole.
wouldn't be an accurate way of describing it.
Fine, no worries. And how does this relate to gravity?
If you have a lot of mass, you have gravity. So if there's a huge amount of mass, like we have on the Earth, right? The Earth has a massive amount of mass. There is gravity.
And what's gravity specifically?
It's an attraction towards other. It's an attraction towards other things in space.
An attraction. Do you want to cite that as a definition of what gravity is? Because that's unfamiliar to me.
No, I don't want you to cite me. No, I would rather you look up the actual definition.
I'm not claiming it. You are. Sorry, my friend. I'm not claiming it. You are.
Okay.
Do you want to define what gravity is for us?
I'm giving you a layman's terminology.
Or don't.
Right?
Just define it. Just define it for what it is.
Well, gravity is something that happens when you have a lot of mass.
Something that happens when you have a lot of mass. And what is it that happens?
Gravity.
Yeah, what is it that happens? You've said gravity is what happens when you have a lot of mass. And okay, something's going to happen. What is... my friend, you don't need to talk through me. My friend. What's going to happen?
Nathan, you can Google this. You can Google
what your claim? I can Google your claim and make it for you, can I? Maybe you could just tell us what gravity is. You've said it's an effect when you have a lot of mass.
I'm not a scientist.
Just don't talk through me. My friend, it's clear that you need to talk through this clarity I'm giving to my question. You've said it's something that happens when you have a lot of mass. So what is going to happen? Yes. Can you tell us what is gravity?
Gravity happens.
Yeah, what is gravity? You've said it's something that happens when you have a lot of mass. And I'm saying, what's going to happen? Don't just circular reason your way out of it by saying gravity again. Yeah, that's what we're asking you to define.
What? Like you've done in previous times before?
Is this the end of your time? Have you run out of stuff to say? All we're asking you to do is define gravity. Something that happens when we've got a lot of mass.
I want to stay on this panel. But I mean, come on. I'm not
just
a
define
scientist.
gravity. It's really simple. Just define what it is.
It happens. Okay.
What's it? What's happening? It happens. What happens?
Okay. What is happening? That is a good question. A very good question. What happens? What happens is that when a lot of mass gets together, they suck in. They don't suck in. There seems to be a force which we cannot explain.
Oh no, sorry, you're wrong. Gravity is not a force. That's incorrect.
Scientists don't know what it is.
Stop! Gravity's not a force. You're incorrect. Why are you talking complete nonsense? Can you stop talking, please? Hello? Can you stop talking? No. It's not a force.
All right. Educate me then.
What, on your claim?
No, educate me about what the forces are.
It is not a force. Gravity is not a force. End quote, George Musa. There isn't really a force of gravity at all, Professor Brian Cox.
Okay. Excellent.
So you, who's claiming this, has just described it as a sucking. Do you want to stop talking through me when I talk? Do you mind? You've described it as a sucking. No, it's not. Then you've described it as a force. No, it's not. Now, I can refute what you've said. I'm not going to make your claim for you. Now, you, who is claiming gravity, I'd like you to define it. You've attempted, and now you're talking through me after failing to define what you're claiming. And you're asking me to go look it up. No, I know what gravity is and is not. I'm not claiming it, so I don't need to define it. But I can rip to shreds your utter nonsense when you define it incorrectly, which is what you've done.
Well, can you tell me what it is then?
It's your claim. That's the third time. The fact that I know what you're claiming and where it's wrong and what to ask you to make it absolutely clear to an audience that you haven't got a clue what you're claiming doesn't mean that I have to make your claim for you.
I don't think I've claimed anything.
You've claimed gravity, you complete bonehead.
Oh, did I?
Oh, did I claim something? Yes, you did, bonehead. Gravity. You don't even know what it is. You're asking your opponent on a debate to define the thing you're claiming for you.
Yes, I want you to...
Yes, so you are incapable of debate. You don't even know what you're claiming. Why are you even here?
Brought onto this room in a different way. I wasn't trying to claim anything.
You claim gravity, dipshit. And I ripped it to shreds and demonstrated to my audience how little you know about what you're claiming, to the point where you say you're not even claiming it, you complete buffoon.
I feel like I've been brought onto a stage and got...
You've been brought onto a debate. You've claimed gravity, then it's been ripped to shreds. That's what's happened.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yes, that's what happened. You complete bonehead. You claim gravity, it was ripped to shreds by a flat earther for an audience. Now you don't seem to know what's going on.
I really don't understand what's going on.
Well, then sit down and shut up.
No, I didn't even...
Sit down, shut up. You don't know what's going on. That means be quiet. It doesn't mean the next sentence needs to come from you. Shut up. Yeah. Ignorant globe head thinks that you have to hold the mic permanently after being demonstrated as stupid, not knowing what you're claiming, and having a flat earther correct you about what you're claiming, and then rip it to shreds, does not mean that you now need to talk incessantly. It means you need to sit down and shut up.
Wait.
Do I have to shut you up, ninja? Hello? Now, for the audience's benefit, what we will now have is a demonstration of belligerent child, who will now stand on the desk, stamp up and down, because he's been shown to be stupid by the teacher.
No.
Sit down and shut up!
No, you haven't...
No, so belligerent child, stupidest person here, has decided, no, I am going to hold on to this mic. I'm going to disturb the class. I'm going to stand on the desk, in spite of being told, not asked, to sit down and shut up.
I wanna...
Yeah, you want to take control of the show. I, however, having just ripped your argument and claimed to shreds, have absolute rights in telling you to shut up. And I'm enjoying doing so. Every time you decide that you're going to, rebel against me telling you what to do, with absolute justification in doing so, I'll just keep telling you. And you don't have to like it, but my audience loves it. They love me ripping your stupid claim from the globe position with faith and religion, the only thing on your sides, having that nonsense ripped to shreds about gravity, and then having me tell you, in no uncertain terms, what's what.
I bet they believe in dinosaurs. I bet they believe.
Or is it time for a subject change?
With men.
Is it time for a subject change, Ninja? Ninja, you've been told to shut up so we can continue housekeeping. Do you think you're now going to take control of the mic?
You tell me, motherfucker.
Do I have to shut you up?
I'm going to fucking keep on talking. I believe.
I don't care what you believe. This isn't your show. Now shut up. I'm forced to mute the guy because he can't take a hint. Hint? I'm telling him in no uncertain terms, you've got nothing to offer. Your argument's been ripped to shreds. It's the end of your time talking. But no, he's going to stand on the desk indefinitely, demanding that we now talk about bloody dinosaurs. No, dipshit. Sit down and know how stupid you are while we move on with more intellectual subjects than you are capable of divulging in debate. Moving on. Any evidence of the distance to the sun? Shout out to John M. Truth, who's joined us as a penguin. Thank you very much. John.
What is the sun?
No idea, Arwin. Just for the audience, right? If you do decide to come onto the panel, like this new dude, Ninja Wallaby, once your argument's been ripped to shreds, just sit down and shut up. Yeah, don't babble on about bloody dinosaurs and stand on the desk demanding that you continually hold the mic. That's just a demonstration of how poor your ability to lose is. Yeah, I know that having your fundamentalist religion is being challenged is going to be painful. I get it. But that doesn't mean you have to take over my show. I'll more than happily converse with you and listen to your claims, and then shut you down, rip it to pieces, and spit it out afterwards. That doesn't mean you get the mic indefinitely afterwards. Just to make that clear, it's not unreasonable that after your argument's been shut down, that you shut the hell up. Distance to the sun? Anybody at all?
Wouldn't you need an R value before?
You would. Any evidence the R value?
I think they just calculate it into existence. If they can calculate it, then it exists, no matter, regardless of whether there's any evidence or not, Nathan. It's just calculated, therefore it's true.
Kudos to Sleeping Warrior, because the head of the fundy gets chopped off a lot quicker with gravity thanks to him and Arwin. Now, in this instance, specifically Sleeping Warrior, who just made it explicitly clear, whenever you debate this subject, that would be gravity, the first words across your lips should be, what's gravity? And then make absolutely certain to get your opponent to define exactly what they're claiming, so that you can later hear them say, I haven't even made a claim, because that's extremely amusing.
It's true. Get them to define it. The minute they say it, because everyone knows what it is, but the minute they say it's a force, just correct them with Einstein, because they can't accept it, because they know it debunks the model, so they'll fight and fight and fight against Einstein. Who cares whether Einstein's right or wrong? It's not Newtonian, so just keep telling them about Einstein, and then the more they push it, you can say, are you saying that you've debunked Einstein? Because they can't say that, because that's not the current science, but they've got to insist that Newtonian gravitation exists in complete and abstract defiance of Einstein. They've got to defy Einstein always.
Speaking of science, and not limited to Einstein, but including him, any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
I've got nothing.
No, they're all observation-based, like the Eddington experiment, which was supposed to prove Einstein correct. That's observation-based. It's not got any experimental application. You can just see something through a telescope and say, oh, yeah, that proves Einstein. It doesn't prove Einstein. It correlates with Einstein, but correlation is science for these morons.
Any evidence that you can have? Go on, whoever that was.
I'm just asking, like, what is supposed to be correlating? Their pre-assumption of it having a physical nature and all these distances?
What's supposed to be correlating is the observation that they expect that might happen. It's got nothing to do with frequencies or patterns or cyclical natures. But if they think that something's going to happen, they can predict it with their mathematical model. And if it happens the way they expect it to happen, that's proof. That's what they do.
What do the mathematical models actually represent in the physical world?
Nothing.
Reification.
Yeah.
Right. So they're just using something that happens in the real world and then making a mathematical structure on top of it, and then claiming that the mathematical structure somehow proves things.
Yeah, because maths is reality, right? That is their mantra. They want to replace and substitute real world experimentation or demonstration with maths. That is their reality.
AKA reification. Any evidence you can have?
Good morning, fellas.
Hey, Chocolate. Hello.
Hey,
Okay.
What's up? What's up, guys?
Guy.
up's a relative direction, Nathan. If you're upside down hanging from a tree, then that would be down.
That's correct. It is relative.
Sky is not always up.
That's correct. It is relative. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container for all the fundy zealots that think the sky is a vacuum called space?
Actually, you can, Nathan. I'll tell you how. Right. Let's say you have a can of beer, right? Back home, me and the boys, us coons, used to go out in the bush and drink six cartons in just an afternoon. And we have all this piss, right? You have beer that's still left in the can, and when the sun heats it up, it'd get all hot and it'd start evaporating out of the can. So inside the can will be slightly more pressure than outside the can.
Yeah,
Cool. What's the
a
can?
container, though.
Yeah,
A can is a
that
container.
was my question.
No, but it has open though. It's
What's
open. It's not
allowing
contained
the-
at all. But it's got more
beer
pressure.
in the can to generate an additional pressure? Would it be the container that was wrapped around it and only that small aperture at the top for it to go out? So that agitation, energy input from the sun, doesn't stay like that, though, does it?
No, it doesn't stay that way. But what I'm saying is it doesn't in nature. In aluminium cans.
Yeah, and a can is a container. So any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container, because it's asserted the Earth is a sphere in a vacuum without containment. No can around it.
Okay, replace beer can with leaves or something like that.
Yeah, that would be a container. Yeah, that would be a container.
Leaves is a container.
Yeah, that would be a container. I'll give you an example. So, for example, you build a bonfire and then you pour petrol all over it. It's covered in leaves. Well, you know what's going to happen? The vapour that comes off the petrol will stay underneath the leaves. It will get trapped. And then if you light it, it'll explode in magnificent fashion because the leaves have created containment for the gas. That's correct. Now, does that mean it will stay there permanently? Nah, it's not a sealed container. Obviously, entropy is still going to take place, but it's going to slow the rate because there's containment in the form of leaves holding gas.
That's right.
I'm lost, right? If I go to the park, what kind of afternoon is going to the park with 6 leaves?
6 leaves.
I'll ask again. Any evidence? And I don't need any demonstrations with 2 containers now, right? 1 container's enough to be debunking this idea that you can have gas pressure without a container. But just so it's out there, any evidence of gas pressure without a container, as it's asserted Earth is, in violation of natural law?
None at all. I've had a really good conversation with a very well-known prominent blurther. I won't say who he is because I don't want to credit his name with anything, but he's one of the most disgusting ones that you can imagine. If you think of the horrible ones, he's at top 3 in the list. And he's on a stock account, and he will not accept that because he knows there's no container, right? There's no lid, whether that's a dome or whatever, it doesn't matter. But he know in his model, he knows that there isn't one. But to try and get round it, he insists that gravity is the container pulling the atmosphere down. He will not accept that Einstein's model, which is the current science for gravitation, he will not accept that cannot pull on matter. He will not accept it. He demands it. He stamps it like a baby that's lost his toys. He's stamping up and down, insisting that gravity's a real thing and we can calculate it and we know it exists because blah, blah, blah. So basically, they insist that gravity's pulling the atmosphere down even though it can't interact with matter because it's not a force. It's just a concept. That's all it is.
I mean, you could refer that guy to Fight the Flat Earth channel and get him to check out his interview with George Musa. And I quote, literally, it's not a force. End quote.
I have tried referring to that channel, and basically he started talking about himself in the first person, even though he's a sock account. So that is the person I'm referring to.
So it's Craig.
Feeling.
So what you're saying is, so you're saying Craig's come, the guy who was personally told this by George Musa, doesn't want to relinquish this idea of gravity being a force when it's literally, and I quote, literally not a force, end quote, George Musa, said to Craig personally.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm saying. Unfortunately,
wow, Craig.
His name,
wow. Do we need Musa to say it again? If he whacks you over the head with a hammer as he says it, will it go in, Craig? Hello? Quote, literally, it's not a force, Craig. Now, that's not me saying it. It's somebody who's told you personally, who's far better qualified to talk on this pseudoscience than I. That'd be Musa.
That just means he can literally think of it as a force.
Yeah, he knows how to be a good dog, right? Musa also told him, instructed him, to think of it as a force. Told him how to think. And Craig's an obedient little dog, so he knows how to think because he's been told how to think by Musa. Now, he paid attention to the how to think bit because he likes being told what to do and how to think. Obviously, he's a globehead. But meanwhile, he ignored the explicit explanation about what gravity is, and more specifically, is not. It's literally not a force, Craig. But you, because you've been told, can think of it as a force. You've been given permission to think in a certain way.
No, not just permission. George Musa says it. We can, we do, we must consider Newtonian gravity as a force. It doesn't mean it really is one, but we don't necessarily have to work at the really is level.
So what he does is he progresses the argument and he says it's an apparent force. You know, like they say that centrifugal force isn't actually a force, it's an apparent force. Well, they're very quick to correct you when you treat centrifugal force as a force, because they say it's an apparent force. They're very quick to correct that. But when you use that correction that they apply against you, against themselves, it becomes like an exception to the rule. It's a bit like Coriolis when they have conservation of momentum. Those gas molecules that are escaping after hitting the Earth's surface, all directions of space, right? Conservation of momentum applies. Newton's first law of motion applies. A gas molecule in motion will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. Well, they don't want that to apply there. So they're happy to apply it with Coriolis, but they don't want it to apply with gas pressure.
Stop.
Yeah, it's the same with apparent forces.
What the hell did any of that have to do with Coriolis deflection, which is an apparent deflection? Apparent means appearing, but not actually. And in the case of Coriolis, it's you on a roundabout watching something like a tree look like it's moving when it isn't, because you're spinning. So it appears that the tree's moving, right? Appearing, but not actually. Appearing in this instance meaning the tree from the roundabout appears to move. It's not actually moving. It's an apparent deflection. Apparently moving, but not actually, is not anything to do with conservation of momentum or anything actually drifting in any way, shape or form. It's a mere effect that you would observe because you're turning underneath stuff, not because it's actually in any way deflecting. So what you just described isn't Coriolis effect as much as I realise that is what they describe as Coriolis effect, when in reality Coriolis is not actual deviation observed as you spin underneath something.
Let me just correct it. So that you asked what's that got to do with Coriolis. When they use Coriolis, they reference conservation of momentum for why they don't see the apparent effects of Coriolis. That's their excuse.
Sorry, just to cut you off again. Quick shout out to Brian's Logic, who details this very phenomena you are describing, manifesting itself in globe believers who fight against the idea that we have Coriolis deflection and justify it with conservation of angular momentum and drift based on a linear change in speed on a presupposed spherical Earth. So that's called the Coriolis effect. If you're unfamiliar, check out Brian's Logic and his explanation for exactly what you've just detailed. It's called Coriolis effect.
But I was just trying to say that because they correct us and say, well, we wouldn't expect to see any Coriolis because of conservation of momentum. The overlap is that when gas molecules are conserving momentum because Newton's first law applies to gas molecules, because they're in motion, they will remain in motion unless acted upon by a force. Well, obviously they pull the atmosphere back down with a force, but gravity, right? Well, we know gravity is not a force, so that debunks the model, but they won't accept it. So they stamp their feet, they stamp their feet, they stamp their feet because they need gravity to be a force.
Stop.
It's not.
Stop. It doesn't debunk the model. It debunks the incorrect assertion of Coriolis effect, because this isn't a claim of Coriolis effect. As much as they might say the word Coriolis when they're detailing what you've just described, and having the retention of angular momentum in case of the atmosphere being velcroed to the Earth and dragged along at the presupposed rotation rates, 15 degrees an hour at any point on the surface. Well, that presupposition started with you stating quite explicitly that the reason for that explanation is to justify why we don't have Coriolis effect. However, it is claimed by the globe that we have 15 degrees an hour deviation. That's Coriolis effect as a result of Earth turning under things that aren't attached. So their defense, when describing what they call Coriolis effect, actually Globiolis effect, described by Anthony with conservation of angular momentum, to describe the lack of Coriolis, something that the globe specifically claims they have. So they're defending not having Coriolis. Well, they're supposed to have it. 15 degrees an hour drift.
Yeah, Nathan, you're missing it.
Imagine having to argue the existence of something by arguing how it doesn't exist.
And how you wouldn't expect it to.
Exactly.
But my point was, Nathan, you said, how does that apply here? And what I'm saying is, because when they apply conservation of momentum for Coriolis, that same principle, conservation of momentum, applies to the gas molecules. So it's an equivalence where they have double standards. On the one hand, conservation of momentum applies for why you don't get Coriolis, but then when it applies to gas pressure, they don't want it to apply then, so they ignore it and they demand that gravity is a force because they know conservation of momentum applies to gas molecules. So they have to make gravity a force. In other words, they're going directly against Einstein.
Yeah, but when they claim conservation of momentum,
Eric Valinda said something about shouting from the rooftop.
Say it one more time, Ted. Sorry. When they say conservation of momentum, you said it again, to justify why there isn't Coriolis. So if you're an audience member and you start getting into an argument, I'd like Anthony, hopefully from now on, to reference it correctly as Globiolis effect when they're describing this, because it's not Coriolis. But they claim there is Coriolis at 15 degrees an hour, and they're justifying why there isn't any drift with this explanation, which there should be according to the globe. There should be 15 degrees an hour drift, that's Coriolis effect, observable from a claim to be spinning Earth. Now that would be you observing things that aren't attached to a spinning Earth, drifting away from you. For example, launching a drone and Earth rotating underneath it at 15 degrees an hour for you to observe it seeming to drift away from you. Same applies to a football. They claim a football goes through a goal because Earth turns underneath it. And you observe that from the stand in the form of Coriolis deviation. It looks like it's curving, but it isn't really. It's Earth turning underneath it. Or they describe it with a sniper's bullet. You have to lead the target. Why? Well, because Earth's going to turn under the bullet when it leaves the barrel. Well, all of these effects that they describe Earth has are Coriolis effect. Not actual drift because Earth's claimed to turn underneath stuff. And when we get into, well, why doesn't it turn underneath a plane? Why doesn't it turn under a hot air balloon? Why doesn't it turn under a helicopter? Why doesn't it turn under a drone? They say, well, conservation of momentum to explain why we don't have the claimed Coriolis drift that we say we have.
Yeah, I just want to say it one last time. Just listen. They use conservation of momentum because it suits them with their nonsense. But when we use conservation of momentum to explain why the gas molecules should be escaping and they're not, because it applies, they must make gravity a force in direct conflict with Einstein. That's the bit I wanted to focus on, the double standard.
And that came through, and I get that. I get what you're saying is that their trench-level rhetoric that uses the conservation of angular momentum with an incorrect assertion that debunks their own claim of Coriolis actually stands in direct contradiction when it comes to the gas that would expand in all directions because it's going to conserve its trajectory.
Yes.
So therefore they have to decry it and then cry out gravity is a force when it's, quote, literally not a force, Craig.
Hey, it's Sleeping Warrior. Remember Eric Valinda from Amsterdam?
Yes.
What did he say he wanted to shout from the rooftop?
I I don't know. Remind me.
Gravity's not a force.
Oh yeah. Sorry, yeah, I thought you were looking at it from the other perspective of why it might be. Yeah, he said, that was the final sentence in his article, wasn't it? We should be shouting it from the rooftops, and he's quite right. Gravity's not a force, but gas pressure would escape.
There's a great little clip of a guy going.
Nathan, and put up the slide.
I can.
Tell me when you're ready.
I can. Where over this text slide, yeah.
Yeah. So may I read?
Yeah, it's on. Go ahead.
Okay. This is an article about Eric Valinda. It's hard to imagine a more fundamental, ubiquitous aspect of life on Earth than gravity. From the moment you first took a step and fell on your diapered bottom to slow terminal sagging of flesh and dreams. But if it's all an illusion, a sort of cosmic frill or side effect of something else going at a deeper levels of reality, ? So says Eric Valinda, 48, a respected string theorist, professor of physics, University of Amsterdam, whose contention that gravity is indeed an illusion has caused a continuing ruckus among physicists, or at least among those who profess to understand it. Reversing the logic of 300 years of science, he argued in a recent paper titled On the Origin of Gravity and the Laws of Newton, that gravity is a consequence of the venerable laws of thermodynamics, which describe the behavior of heat and gases. For me, quote unquote, for me, gravity doesn't exist, said Dr. Valinda. So the rest is moot at this point.
Do you know what Dr. Valinda also says? He also describes it as more of an entropic effect. And when he describes how it's an entropic effect, he uses the word force, an entropic force or an apparent force or whatever. He uses the word force. So blurthers, particularly Fight the Flat Earth, focus on the word force rather than entropic. And because it's got the word force, that makes it a force again, completely ignoring what the point he's actually saying, which I tend to agree with. I don't agree with everything he says, but yeah, what we're seeing is entropy in the sense that pressure is pushing something from higher pressure to lower pressure because you've manipulated something or you're observing something that's in disequilibrium. The force that's pushing the egg and submarines and hot air balloons when they're in disequilibrium is pressure. You're causing the pressure. That's what you're doing. I agree with him. It's entropy. You're looking at the effects of entropy, and you can call it an entropic force if you want, but it's not a push caused by gravity or a pull caused by gravity. It's actually entropy. It's being pushed by pressure. That's what's happening.
And the interaction of a person or a third party into that equation is described very admirably by Dr. John Dee in his most recent series. I think it's a 3-parter. So check out Dr. John Dee's discussion in this regard, where he gives a full-on description of these quote-unquote entropic forces with third-party influence, but he doesn't use the word force at all.
See, it's because force is a concept, isn't it? Force is essentially something that we describe because we see something moving, therefore there must be a force. But we can't see pressure because pressure isn't always direct. It can be indirect. That's why Brownian motion exists, because pressure creates Brownian motion. Well, if anyone denies that pressure creates Brownian motion, then you're also denying the ability for pressure to push against things, which obviously we know that pressure does push against things because balloons burst because of pressure, right? Too much of it, too much mass in a given volume and it'll blow up. Well, that Brownian motion proves that there is pressure pressing, and that is what we see. So why things are displacing. It's brilliant.
When they say gravity now, when I hear somebody claiming it, what I now see is a little clip that some of them, it might be a couple of years ago, used to play on their videos, which was this like hick-looking guy going, "Gravity, gravity, you idiots." And that is so appropriate. It's what I actually see when they start saying it now. So when I hear them going, "Gravity," I just picture that hick.
Yeah, I agree. That guy, gravity, you fools. Like, there's a couple of people on their side that use it, but it's we should use it. We should steal it off them because whatever gravity is, we know it's not a force. So we need to steal it back, really.
But like I say, it's so appropriate because they're saying, look, the reason they're using it is saying, look, even a redneck hick gets this. It's like, no, you come across as the redneck hick on the street corner, babbling nonsense to people who are more informed than him. Well, it's gravity. I read it in the paper. Oh, did you now? Good, son. Yeah, tap tap on your head. Good for you, redneck.
Meanwhile, next to that redneck on the corner, there's a guy holding a helium balloon that's trying to go up.
Exactly. Yeah, hold my balloon for me, redneck.
Hang on. Let me give Adam a thumbs up here. Sounds like that guy had 6 leaves in the forest, Adam.
I just want to point out Newton's third law of motion as well, because like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if there's a set of keys being dropped going gravity, then it also means that something else was an equal and opposite reaction. So why is it that the keys going down is the thing that we observe, but we forget about and ignore when pointed out that there's an equal and opposite reaction going the other way? I don't really care what that is, and you can describe it any way you want. But if we see something like a helium balloon going up, there's an equal and opposite reaction coming back down, isn't there, according to Newton's third law? So let's not forget that it's a balancing act. Now, what do we know about balancing acts? And we know that they cause equilibrium. So we know that for an equal and opposite reaction, we're essentially looking at a balancing of something because there's something else going on the opposite way.
We also know that the laws of motion of Newton were not right. What's the equal and opposite reaction if I push on a mountain?
I know, but it's their laws of motion, isn't it? So
I know, but I'm still going to highlight this. I'm not arguing with you. I know you know it's their nonsense position that you're putting across. But still,
this is why we don't get
we're not right
because they can't defend this stuff.
Who said that? Was it Feynman that said that? Usually Feynman
said what?
Yeah.
Sorry, Nathan. What? Who are you asking?
Anybody? It's normally the best quotes. They're always Feynman's. I don't know who said that, but I think it was Feynman. If I'm wrong,
Feynman said that we know that the laws F equals ma were not right and needed to be adjusted, but nonetheless in quantum mechanics it did turn out to be right, but they needed fine tuning. Well, probably because they were just thinking, it's like if you look at a hot air balloon, you fill the fixed volume with a known mass of warm air that you know is less dense than the cold air around it, and an acceleration occurs. If you look at a submarine, a fixed volume, you know that you can fill that volume with a known mass of water that's more dense than the air that's in it because it's at the top of the water. You fill it with water and then an acceleration occurs because it sinks or dives, I think they call it. It doesn't go towards, it's not attracted towards the center of Earth. It's diving because you've made the mass of the relative mass or the relative density of the sub greater than the medium it's in. So it dives. It doesn't get attracted towards down. It dives, right? And then you get rid of the water that's in the ballast tanks and then you replace it with gas instead. And then all of a sudden another acceleration occurs going the other way. It's not a buoyant force that you're causing, is it? You're manipulating the density of the matter that you're in, the submarine, and then that's the cause. But Blurthers will insist that buoyancy is causing it because they'll change what you've manipulated, getting rid of the seawater from the ballast tanks. They'll change that from that and they'll say, well, no, actually, you're changing the gravity because gravity is pulling on the water and you're getting an upthrust. And that's not, you didn't add upthrust into the ballast tanks, did you? You removed the water and you add gas. That's the cause because that's what the independent variable states. The thing that you manipulate is the cause, not the thing that they insist that you accept instead, which let's not forget is just conceptual. It's not actual. So they're asking you to ignore that in favor of their concept just for their delusions. No, the independent variable is the thing you manipulate. That would mean adding or removing water or adding or removing gas. And then an acceleration occurs, which is what we see real world. We've known about this for hundreds of years.
Yeah, exactly what Dr. John D is covering. So relative density disequilibrium and the returning to equilibrium in your example with the submarine. Well, their assertion, and it wasn't a misspeak by Anthony, when he said buoyancy, when they say buoyancy, they are invoking gravity. It's just part of the explanation for buoyancy is specifically referencing gravity. So they'll transpose what we now describe as a disequilibrium as, no, it's just less buoyant. Well, what does less buoyant mean? Well, less gravity or more of a pull downward on the water, forcing the other item up. It's like, well, that isn't what's actually changed. You're invoking a force, but what you're doing is you're changing the density of the thing in the liquid. That would be the submarine. You're not changing a force, and there's no force pulling down to force it up. You're taking out liquid and replacing it with gas.
Yep. But not only that, they're dismissing the thing that you did do. They're not just invoking gravity. They're replacing the thing that you did do, which was get rid of the water and replace it with gas to see the acceleration that they call, I don't know what the opposite of diving is, surfacing. That you see that effect surfacing is they're ignoring the fact that, or they're dismissing the fact that you've got rid of the water and replaced it with gas. And again, it's substituting buoyancy. So it's the double-edged sword. They're taking away the cause and they're substituting it with a concept. Well, that's the reason we're all going wrong. It's why some people think that there's an absolute up and an absolute down when submarines dive and surface. It's not up and down, is it? They dive and surface because that's relative to them. That's what they're doing. But that's why people get confused. It's really obviously intuitive when it's explained from the different perspective. They're stealing the thing that you manipulate and replacing it with a concept instead.
I think that covers housekeeping, because I was going to leave it till last, but we covered it within that discussion. Any evidence of axial rotation?
So, Anthony, summarizing what you said beautifully, the manipulation of water and gas within the ballast tank is what you're actually doing. It's not some force.
Yeah, but they take that away by inferring some conceptual thing instead. Well, we know that the thing that causes the up and down movement or the rising and surfacing and diving movement is removing the water and replacing it with gas. But they take that away from you and say, no, that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is, of course, you're changing the density, the buoyancy, and the gravity and the buoyancy. That's what they insist is going on instead. But that's taken away what you've actually done. You haven't removed or added buoyancy or gravity. You've literally added water, removed water or added water, removed gas or added gas. So they're ignoring the thing that you've manipulated and substituting it with a concept instead, exactly the way they do with my egg test. I didn't add or remove gravity or buoyancy. I added salt. Now, I don't care what happens after that, but that was the cause. I added salt and it did something. Well, they ignore that and say, no, it's gravity and buoyancy instead. No, that's conceptualizing the thing that I manipulated. That's not what science is, but they insist that it is. It's not. Which is why I put the 10. That's why I put the 10 definitions at the beginning of the video for what the independent variable is. The thing I manipulated, because I knew that they would do that. Because the Mongs.
So in conclusion, the sky is not a vacuum, because if it was, the gas would expand in all directions to fill the availability of volume that it has to fill. That would be the space available, and they call the sky vacuum space. How ironic. Meanwhile, they claim that they have a force that's holding the gas here, in complete contradiction to gas behaviour. And this force that they claim is not a force. Literally, it's not a force.
It's like all they do is hijack stuff, right? They've hijacked perspective, they hijack effects that we see in reality, and just slap a cool story on it and say, no, this is what's actually happening.
So it's like, I always use the Ferrari example, Chocolate. You drive a Mercedes, right? Is that right?
Oh, me? No.
Okay, let's just say you drove a Mercedes, right?
Sure.
Under no circumstances is your Mercedes ever going to be a Ferrari, right? It's always going to be a Mercedes. And even if you think that it might be a Ferrari, that still doesn't make it a Ferrari. That's what they're doing with gravity. They're making you think it's a force when it's not. It doesn't push or it doesn't act on matter. Just even though you can think of it as a force and it might be an apparent force, it appears to be doing something. It's not, because it's defined and we know the cause. And it's not what you guys need it to be. So there's nothing pulling the atmosphere back. So you guys your model is missing something, isn't it? It's missing the explanation or the mechanism that stops the gas molecules from escaping, because we know that they do, because we can demonstrate it. There's no demonstrations in current science that demonstrate gas pressure coexisting alongside a vacuum without a container of some kind. That's why we have wind, because high pressure goes to low pressure. All the high pressure is created over the oceans mainly, and then over the Sahara Desert where there's not a lot of evaporation, that's low pressure, and then you get the balance between the two. That's pressure going to low pressure. That's what we call wind. We call the Sahara Desert wind. You're literally seeing with wind the equalization of pressure variations caused by the sun in the biogeochemical cycle, and we see it every single day.
Chocolate,
what
would you...
Gas particles are not bouncy balls.
No, gas does not go down, go boom, boom like bouncy balls in a fish tank. Chocolate, compared to Newtonian gravity, what words would you describe for the newer version, the Einsteinian gravity? How would you describe that?
What do you mean? The new hotness?
Yeah, the new. I wonder why Anthony thinks you've got a Mercedes.
Well, Anthony, you said, I mean, you already quoted them, and also Nathan, George Musa, Brian Cox, and Eric Melinda. Gravity can't act on matter the way that they're describing it. So it's over. Even their own priests tell them that.
Yeah, it's over. You're right. Gravity cannot act on matter.
Isn't it over in like third grade when you learn about the water cycle and you learn how that works?
It's because they don't tell you that that's how it applies. They tell you that it applies like to the, and you can see it, right? But you don't make the connection because it's indoctrinated into you, isn't it? It's like there's a globe in every classroom, so everything's gravity. That's why gravity is such an.
It's literally like doublespeak, man. They'll show you a diagram of the water cycle with the gas that's evaporating from the ocean pointing up, going up, and then at the same time they're telling you that there's something pulling the gas down.
You guys remember what lesson you learnt that in? Because obviously
it's the ozone layer.
Hold on 1 second, Owen. Can you remember what lesson that was in? Because from my memory, it was not in one of the science classes. Now, the science classes gave you artificial layers, containers, but what lesson taught you? Can you remember where you learned about the biogeochemical cycle? Which lesson? It wasn't science.
For me, I remember it in science. Yeah, Earth science actually.
Well, I remember it being taught in geography.
They called it Earth science, and on the textbook on the cover of the textbook, it had a globe on it all the time.
Well, I was taught it in geography. Same with the weather. That got taught to me in geography class as opposed to science class.
Oh yeah, I think you might be right. I think it was geography.
They didn't separate that. Well, in my school, they didn't separate. It was just science. So we had science and geography, all of that. It was all included. They called it Earth science when I went to school. I don't know what they call it now, but
I think I agree with Nathan. I think it might have been in geography that I got taught that too.
Well, Americans like to bundle things.
Yeah.
Science, geography, cause and effect as opposed to measuring the land. Yeah, I can see how you'd bundle those two together. They have done in terms of the paradigm.
Like science, math, English, so all that stuff like your geography, all that would be included in science.
Right.
Yeah.
Content.
No, I was going to say English, math, science, history, and then of course they bundled everything. As Chocolate says, you guys in the UK got detailed more than we did.
Maybe. With that, you'll get the discussion in regards to our education structure here in the UK versus the States in the after show, because this is where we bid the farewell to the live audience. So massive thank you to all of you who joined, smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out NathanOakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream on Nathan Oakley or Nathan Oakley 1980. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Melinda talks about the entropic forces, and you had a good summary on that as well earlier.
Yeah, he describes it as pressure going to non-pressure, essentially. It's reducing it down to its simplest, because he uses sophistry to make it sound complicated, and when you read it, it's hard to read. But he's literally saying it's pressure going to non-pressure. That's literally what he's saying, which is essentially pressure. That's literally what entropy. That's what he's describing.
Doesn't even put the word entropic into the description.
Description, yeah.
Right, so entropic. Yeah, so it's entropy then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Entropic, that's what he's saying it is. Literally entropic, yeah.
Yeah, nice when they agree with us.
Amazing how much wiggling they've got to do when we correct them with their current science that they don't like it, and they honestly, it's brilliant. If you engage them, you'll watch. They'll either say that gravity's pulling it down, and gravity's a force, and they'll insist that it's a force, or they'll what's the other one that they do? Yeah, they need gravity to be a force. That's what they do. They completely deny Einstein. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it happened on today's show, right? You were here.
I was listening to it with.
How would you deny Einstein? Einstein, it technically doesn't claim anything. It's just all conceptual anyway.
Exactly. That's why it's like that, right? What's there to deny? Well, you're saying it doesn't work like that in pseudo-force space? Because it does. Well, what's pseudo-force space? A place we can't visit. A not real place that you've invented. But it does work in that not real place. And how are you going to argue that if you don't appreciate that?
But how does somebody give you a story, right? And then you take it upon yourself to try to defend this story, but then you only when you actually defend it, all you say is, "Oh, I only like this part of the story. I don't like the whole story," even though it's not your story.
Isn't that how everybody does things?
Yeah, if they've got a fundy faith, they do. Yes, that's exactly what they do. Chocolate's just going, well, how did they do that? Well, with a lot of difficulty and cognitive pain.
But it's ridiculous. Like you didn't come up with this crap. They told you this. They fed you this, right? And then you're gonna come in here and say, "All right, I don't care what Neil deGrasse or Brian Cox. I don't care what they say, even though they're the ones out there touting the story. I don't care what they say. I like the other part of the story that they're not touting. So I'm just gonna defend that. I'll stay right there because I'm comfy right there."
Nathan, I'm sorry. Go to Master B, Nathan.
I've got it up. I'll put it up 10th. It's up.
Okay, so you said entropic and Eric Valinda. So here's the link in Master B, but here's a part of the beginning article. 2.5 months since Eric Valinda submitted his entropic gravity paper, and all of physics and cosmology had turned into entropy. Well, I'm exaggerating a bit, and perhaps more than just a bit. Yet, fact is that within 2 weeks of Eric's publication, a steady stream of entropic everything papers has developed at a rate of close to 1 paper per day. Gravity, Einstein's equations, cosmic expansion, dark energy, primordial inflation, dark mass, it's all entropic. Chaos rules, entropy is king.
But Craig cites that he takes the entropic force that he's describing. It's probably the wrong word, force, because like the pressure moves from A to B, right, from high to low. He takes that use of the word force and then makes gravity back into a force by doing it. That's literally what he does. It's brilliant to watch.
Thank you, 10th.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they want to keep their gravity a force, but have to deal with it conceptually.
As I say, that's what space-time bending gives them. A place where it will work mathematically. Unless it doesn't work. Let's just brush over that.
So couldn't it be stated that they're basically holding on to gravity, not because they understand it, that it is necessary to be there, but really because they don't understand what's going on, and it's just that all the fundamental stories that they've gone by have gravity in them, like in the formulas. Like, oh, this proves gravity. No, it presupposes it. So all this material presupposes gravity. That's why they almost instinctively and by conditioning have this subconscious feeling like gravity has to be there because everything they use suggests it is a part of everything.
Correct.
They hold on to gravity because they can't explain the sky if they don't.
Well, they've moved the position from 0 to 1. So 1g would be the equivalent of equilibrium as far as I'm concerned, but they assert that there's a pressure being placed on your body. Well, no, that's 0 as far as I'm concerned. Now then they push you into disequilibrium and let you fall in a plane, and they say that that's negating the force that they invented on the ground that didn't exist in the first place. And that's 0G. No, you're falling. You're returning to equilibrium with something around you. You're very much not in 0. You're in a state of disequilibrium. And eventually, when you hit the ground and go splat, you'll return to 0. But they'd just say, no, you've now got 1G.
Guys, I got something that I think about the story, about how they only accept certain parts of the story, not all the story. So the Blue Marble 2.0 was being talked in the live stream chat during the show. And they kind of rejected, I saw the globalists reject that it produced a flat map. They rejected the part that it was Photoshop because it had to be, but they wanted to just look at the final product as proof of the globe.
They rejected that part, even though the guy that made it said that. You see what I'm saying, man? Is that not some type of delusion?
They do it all the time.
Delusional.
They do it all the time. They say, still no measurements of flat Earth, and you go, yeah, Google Earth. It's all flat. It's no drop. And their response will be something along the lines of, yeah, but if you zoom out on Google Earth, it shows it as a sphere. Yeah, that's fascinating. It's measured and demonstrating it with no drop, flat. That's what it's showing, and they're claiming they've measured it. So it's measured flat. But what, it looks like a sphere when you scroll out on your mouse wheel? Wonderful proof.
Yeah, it was Akuma. He's here right now. So, I mean, if he said I misrepresented the text conversation, but a lot of stuff does get lost in translation in text. So I was hoping maybe he'd see what the big takeaway was.
Share your pain.
Well, wouldn't his model need a radius in reality?
I want to hear about the delusion that I'll accept this part, but not the other part, even though the guy is the one who created the damn thing and says it's Photoshop, because it has to be.
It's the same as the Einstein point. They'll pick the bits that they want, they'll ignore the bits that they need, and that's okay for them.
That's all they got. Sad.
No, they can't do special orders. They can only do that at McDonald's if they don't want no sauce. They gotta go with it.
Because it started off because they said that there's no flat Earth map. And so I cited the Blue Marble. The Blue Marble said they started with a flat Earth map and then wrapped it around the ball.
That is a really good counter.
He did.
Yeah.
What the guy said.
If they want a flat Earth...
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was just saying, yeah, that's what he said. Rob Simmons.
You know who detailed that process long before he came out with that statement?
Oh.
Yeah, it's like all the time that they're asking flat Earthers, where's your map? Go to NASA. They say they got one. A source you will not reject even.
Yeah, prior to him making that statement, presumably while they were in the process of actually doing it, Math Powerland was highlighting how NASA do it. Exactly as described by him.
That's interesting.
That's their disco ball Earth with.
Didn't NASA hire him to do that?
I don't know about that. So he says, or implies.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know Math Powerland personally. I was never working at NASA to verify his credentials as an employer or a subcontractor or whatever he claims that he does. I don't know. The answer is, I don't know. Maybe. Doesn't matter. The fact that he exposed information like that is, again, regardless of his credibility or credentials in that regard, it doesn't matter. He exposed precisely that, almost in the same words. They take flat planes, they take the imagery, they wrap it around a sphere. That's what they're doing. I'm sure he was describing it as they were doing it from memory.
Nathan, can I ask you something about your show?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead, Eric.
I'm just wondering, for this year or in general, does your show's a business, and you personally, do you have a mission statement for your show, or like any goals that you're trying to achieve this year?
Not really. My ambitions are as a YouTuber. So what I wanted was a show that had longevity. Now, until the entire Western paradigm changes from sphere to flat, I'm pretty secure in my show, right? So that's good, because that's what I want to be doing. I want to be making YouTube videos, and I love the subject, so it makes sense to have a format around the subject, because originally I just interviewed people about flat Earth. Now, you eventually run out of people to interview, right? You've got to do something, and I want to talk about the subject. So this seemed like the most logical way of being able to talk about the subject on a daily basis, and invite others to join, to challenge us. Adds a bit of drama, but ultimately my main aim is just to sit here talking about flat Earth because I love the subject, and this gives me the ability to do so, and keeps it from an outward point of view. You can look at the show and go, well, I could go in there and just say you're an idiot, you're a flat earther, you don't know what you're talking about, like the ninja guy did earlier. Yeah, no, gravity just applies to the molten iron core that I've presupposed. Does it now? Let's rip that to shreds. But the fact that he had the ability to come in is part of the hook of the show. Doesn't mean there's a mission statement. I even declare that I don't care if they go away believing exactly the same thing they came in with, in spite of the fact that we've ripped it apart. That guy, Ninja, is not going to change his views, and that's not my objective. So is there a mission statement? Not really. To debate the nature of our reality. Pretty big subject.
Yeah, that's great. But you do want to expand this. You want to get more followers, more people in here, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that's encompassed by saying I want to be a YouTuber. So yes, that's automatically assumed. But yes.
So are you I love how the show has just refined the arguments, just pound them to a fun, sharp knife edge. I'm wondering how you can get. I would love to hear more Globers come in here, and I'm just wondering if we can brainstorm a way for this show to get bigger and get more people in here, because I love it too, and I want to hear more Globers. I want people personally to wake up to what's going on, and I want you to do well on your show. So I don't know, I want to help you, or I want people to help you brainstorm how to get bigger.
Okay, well that's very kind, but there's 3 separate things there. I'll probably forget the third by the time I get to it. The first thing is wanting the show to grow. Well, that's got everything to do with people sharing the show, telling a friend about it via a social media share. That's how the show grows, because it doesn't get a great deal of exposure from the platform itself for reasons that there's no point going into, everyone's aware of. However, sharing the show, that will grow the show. That's why I say at the beginning of every show. Now, the second point is you want more fundies to come here to debate. I want the opposite. Now, that might seem strange, given that I'm on a debate show, and I can debate, and you think I've got the debating points down to a fine razor edge, which is lovely to hear. But by the same token, I would be more than content to sit here without any fundies coming in. Number one, that demonstrates to the audience, when there's an open door, that they don't come. Does that bother me? No, we're still talking about the subject. We've got housekeeping to keep us very much on the subject matter daily. So anyone who comes and watches, they're still going to hear the same information, new or otherwise. And occasionally people will come in and want to challenge it and have their arguments ripped to shreds. But from your perspective, sat where you are, you want more fundies because you like the debate, right? You like the drama. Me, it gives me a headache. I'd rather sit with people who I like. I mean, I actually like sitting and talking to Adam and Sleepy Morrow and Neil, Chocolate, Arwin, 10th. I like talking to them. Yeah? And I could do that all day. So the fact that I've got a show around that and it's about a specific subject matter and we're very much on topic, but someone can come in and challenge it at any point, that's good enough for me. Now the fact that you want more of that, yeah, I understand. It's the drama and everyone likes that. Especially if you're on the flat earth side, because we win.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And I always try to search out, I think for your channel, if you could clip out all the times that you destroy the ballers, because man, they're so funny. And you're just killing them too. So if you put those clips out there, I feel like you draw more people in. People who are offended and people who would be just laughing because it's brilliant.
There are. So when times get tough, which they do frequently, you'll notice my video output going up exponentially. That's because the YouTube revenue's gone down. So normally there's a direct correlation between how many videos I put out and how badly I'm doing, just so you know. Anyway, to bolster that, it means I'm paying attention and actually can react to it to do something about it. But that aside, I have put out loads and loads and loads of trimmed out clips. Now, if they're a specific baller getting absolutely annihilated, it goes into a playlist called toe tags. So there's a toe tag playlist, and there's loads of them. But yeah, so check that out if you want to. But that doesn't necessarily make all the world of difference that you might think it does, because to a regular YouTuber, yeah, you put out a few clip videos of your base material, and those clips might get shared far and wider by YouTube and their algorithm. Oh, right, that doesn't really apply to me. So other than engaging the audience I actually have in my subscription base, or any extraneous ballers that aren't subscribed, that's it. You know, it's just down to people sharing, because that's the only exposure and growth that I'll see, is when people. That's why I pester people to do it. So there's a fine line between literally nagging people to share and being a little bit of a pest and going, come on, you know, if you haven't shared the show already, just stick it in your Facebook, because that's the way the show will grow. Not by having more clips or anything else. You know, that does obviously generate me more revenue, because people will watch them because they like watching. If they've watched it already, they like watching that baller get smashed again. You know, so they'll watch them, and that obviously generates the ad revenue that keeps me in this seat. Hope that answers your question.
Chat.
Go on, sorry.
Smash the super chat after that.
Indeed, yeah, smash the super chat. Also, there's no obligation. Just for the naysayers. Because there are a few people out there that'll say, oh, no, smashing the super chat, you're e-begging. Yeah, I am. Yeah, I make a living from doing this, like a lot of other people who are on YouTube. However, there is absolutely no obligation whatsoever to A, join the show, B, give me any money, C, watch at all. But thank you for watching, those moaning about the money that I get. Yeah, thank you for decrying me a living. But thank you for watching.
Funny, the hypocrisy is high, isn't it? Because like you see on Blurther videos that they'll have like a ticker across the bottom or a page dedicated to their Patreons, and they're like, yeah, waft this money in their face. They don't have a problem with that, but they do have a problem with people who go, hang on a sec, we're not even making money out of this. Or in Nathan's case, he is. But most people on our side don't do it for money. We do it because we realize that we're being lied to. Yeah, if anybody dare put a super chat, they use it against you as if it's some kind of dirty word. It's astonishing the double standards level that they apply.
Yeah, because they see it as perfectly reasonable to punt the current rhetoric, which is socially acceptable, and ask for money for doing so. Whereas somebody who challenges the current rhetoric is an evil liar making money from fraud. Their attitude. The fact that the reality is the other way around. No, there's a massive fraud being perpetuated on the Western world, and that fraud is the sphere lie that people have reified. And that lie gets perpetuated out by the people who are claiming we're the frauds, claiming the flat earthers who are pointing out where it all falls to pieces, that we're the frauds. Well, you know, we have to accept that. That's our lot in life, unfortunately. You know, the people who are actually the punting nonsense people that they are will tell us that we're frauds. It's like, why? We're talking about natural law, giving you demonstrations and asking for demonstrations in return of gas pressure without containers, and getting demonstrations with 2 containers. But yet we're the frauds? Not at all.
They're literally just making money off touting the same thing that everyone's been told since we were 5. Like, this, they're just touting the status quo and making money off that.
Once again, Nathan, it strikes me as projection. They know it's not a ball. So they're the ones that are making money off trying to. Now, you're not there thinking it's a ball, pretending it's flat. That would be fraudulent. Yeah. So again, I think it's projection on their part.
It is. And also, like I said, it is actually technically, if they were aware of it, which they're probably not, they that are committing the fraud. And it's an outrage. They shouldn't be making money from that. Anyway, smash the super chat, become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, hit the PayPal link.
How big is your toe tag list now, Nathan?
I don't know. It's been a while. I just add every clip that I get to it. I just add it to the toe tag list, so I don't tend to keep a tab on it. I'll plug that.
It's interesting too, because like that's a.
Go on.
I'll say it's interesting too, because interactions with you, financial, are completely voluntary. People can choose or not to choose, or not. I mean, to donate. While NASA literally has a gun at your head, and if you don't pay, you're a criminal.
right? And on that note, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!